Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back to Cup of Joe with Joe. And I'm glad to be here tonight with you guys. Great opportunities. We, hey, thanks, Mike. Thanks, appreciate it. Um, so, over the weekend, I got to do something awesome. This was my first libertarian convention. For those of you who aren't familiar with my particular political track, since I've been out of the military, I have participated in three conventions. Two of them for the Green Party, and this last one for the Libertarian Party. The Green Party was back. Oh man, it was the year Bernie ran, and then again 2 years later, participated in that one, and no, it was the 2 years after Bernie ran. So 2000. So I did 2018, 2020. Oh, that. Okay. We're working on the process. Got to find the zone. Anyway, thanks for the tip there, Mike. That my screen was a little off center. Appreciate that. No sense making things confusing. So after being out of the military, I did a little stint with the Democrats. The Bernie Hillary thing kind of soured me on that and really drilled it home. After all the years deployed under both Bush, Obama, and then coming back home, trying to rebuild, recreate myself and get involved in activism, do my anti-war thing, trying to figure out who the anti-war activists were here in the United States and getting involved with them. And yes, I do happen to have several friends in the Democratic Socialists of America, as well as the Party of Socialization and Liberation. Okay, because no matter what anybody thinks, we do have common goals. We have a lot of common goals. One of them is the end of war. Global peace. We like the idea of global peace. Party of Socialization, global peace. Democratic Socialists of America, global peace. Libertarian Party, global peace. The Mises, libertarians, the Rothbardians, just about every anarchist I know, all very much involved in what we want to do as far as peace, what we can do to bring our troops home and to defend the guard so that our units don't end up, well, our home, our militia, our sons and daughters that join the military to stay home and serve in the local area, the militia, right now. And this goes back to the issues with Ukraine, because right now in the Ukraine, when the Russian invasion, let's go ahead and call it what it is. When the Russian invasion occurred, we actually had U.S. National Guard troops. Okay, these are state guys. U.S. National Guard troops conducting exercises in Western Ukraine along the Polish border. Yeah, we had National Guard troops on the ground in the initiation of a hot conflict in Eastern Europe. Think that through. Now, defend the guard, that started out with individual, I believe, in Pennsylvania. I'm not sure particular. For those of you who aren't familiar, the Scott Horton Show. Okay, if you're following on Twitter, at Scott Horton Show. Okay, now Scott is not a veteran, but he is a libertarian activist, and he is an anti-war. He is a pro-peace activist that has been very busy, very diligent, and involved with a lot of groups, across the spectrum in talking about the things that we can do with the resources we currently spend on war, as well as all of the humanitarian reasons to end war, to end conflict. So that was it. We had opportunity, but that was part of my thing, is it was anti-war. First was Bernie, and then, Hillary got the job. And then after Hillary didn't get the job, Trump got the job. And we never really settled that particular issue with regards to, how all of that played out. Um, so didn't take me long to get disgruntled with the anti-war Democrats when the anti-war Democrats were no longer anti-war because Obama was in office. So I rotated around, tried doing the green thing for a little bit. Uh, yeah, that didn't pan out so well either. Reason why is because there were simply too many people involved in the Green Party that actually believed in humanitarian conflicts. Okay. For those of us who have been downrange, there is no such thing as a humanitarian conflict. There is no such thing as a humanitarian war. The only just war is one in self-defense. Anytime the United States gets involved in a conflict overseas, there is no justice in it. It is not just by any means, by any stretch of the imagination. So, as a libertarian, as a peace activist, and that was one of the things that actually brought me into the Libertarian Party, was the idea that, honestly, don't fight for people who won't fight for themselves. That's straight up. It's sad, but at the end of the day, going in and fighting for people who won't fight for themselves, you end up doing more damage to their culture, right? There we go, Mike. You know the drill. Save the children for American drone targets. Because that's what we were doing. Obama dropped drone to hospital. Before that, Iraq war. This actually goes back to Daddy Bush. When we droned a milk factory in Iraq, we blew up the ability for Iraq to actually make formula for, infants in Iraq. And I actually talked about this last week, or maybe I didn't. But the idea that we blew up manufacturing and industry food processing plants like baby milk, formula and other things. And here we are, 2022, and, industry, regulations, market monopolization has shut down. Yeah, why do we hate baby formula so much? Why are we blowing up baby formula factories? Why are we shutting down baby formula factories? We can talk about, yeah, Sherry, thanks for coming. So this weekend, my first full-on libertarian convention. As a member of the LP National, as a member of the LP Idaho, as a candidate for the Libertarian Party of Idaho. Right? All that. That's one of the things, no matter what else was going on at that party, we all believed no more wars. Peace on earth, goodwill towards men, right? It's the goal. Peace on earth, goodwill towards men. And the best way to do that, of course, is bring our troops home. And okay, for those of you who are paying attention right now, Tulsa, if you're in the Tulsa area, pay attention. Hospital? Really? A hospital? Oh, man. It's a rough one. Why is the free market stockpile guns and not baby formula? That's an actual good question, Amberly. Reason why is because guns are a luxury people want to buy. Baby formula is a necessity. Now, we got an awful lot of people out there that talk about the issue going, wow, you can always breastfeed. Well, no, you can't. Not the way that we've morphed our culture today, and the fact that an awful lot of women, after having children, aren't able to maintain milk long enough in order to continue feeding the baby through that entire development period. But that is one of those things. We don't stockpile it because it is a necessity. And rarity creates demand. It's manufactured scarcity in order to increase profit margins. That's why we don't stockpile baby formula. Um, the other thing is the issue of perishability. Baby formula doesn't last long. Guns, as long as you're maintaining them, will last forever. Um, okay, update. Extra Bola. Multiple people have been killed in the shooting on the campus of St. Francis Hospital in Tulsa, Oklahoma. The gunman is dead. Um, go to A. Right, Mike? Go to A. Hey, so, and yeah, James, so absolutely. The daily shootings in the USA. Let's go ahead and talk about this issue because Uvalde Strong was one of those things that I did put on the highlights, talking about shootings in America, the gun culture. Okay. Um, yes. Now, one of the things that we like to talk about is the fact that gun violence, gun that, gun violence this, gun violence that, gun violence here, gun violence there. And we like to say the common denominator is guns, but it really, okay, you are talking gun violence, so there is a common denominator. It is called guns. And the problem is gun ownership has a really poor correlation to gun violence. Legal gun ownership has an extremely poor correlation to gun violence. So, what are the other common denominators where there is a greater correlation of cause and effect, or at least correlation? And we all know correlation does not equal causation. It's one of those things when we talk about the FBI profilers. Yes, I am talking about FBI, one of our three-letter agencies that does evil things to us, when we're not paying attention. Okay, so I can't talk about that one. However, I can go back to Uvalde school shootings and other issues. Militarized cops. Now, it's a particularly interesting discussion, especially in relationship to Broward County from Florida. We remember that one a couple of years back, as well as the most recent one with Uvalde Strong. Now, last night was Tuesday night, day after Memorial Day. Members of March for Our Lives all across the United States participated in vigils for the Uvalde students, most of whom were 9 and 10 years old when they died, across the nation. I attended one here in Boise, Idaho on the Capitol steps, managed by several students that are members of March for Our Lives. It's actually an interesting 501c3 when you take a look at it, because most of the executive board of March for Our Lives are young adults. These are 17, 18, 19-year-old high school seniors and juniors that are involved in organizing. I mean, seriously, these are our actionist children all across the United States. These are the kids who will become the actionist adults, the ones who get out and make change. Now, I'm an older gentleman. I have a few differences of opinion with regards to where they are and what it is they're trying to, with the way they're trying to do it, because that's ultimately, we're all trying for the same thing, right? We all want to end violence. We all want to end the deaths of young children. We all want to bring an end to death and destruction, whether it's by war, whether it's by domestic violence. Ultimately, that's what we're about. We as communities, whether we are talking about, go ahead and close that out. Amber, you bring up the good point. It's no longer about the knee jerk for gun control, because we know that's no longer the problem. That gun control won't stop the problem, but it makes for a nice selling point. And every time a politician says gun control, the gun market goes bonkers. And, that's another billion in firearm sales, because everybody wants to stock up on guns in case the government comes for the guns that they lost in boating accidents. You know, U.S. soldiers so good abroad at killing people. Ironically, okay, you typoed this, James, because I know what you were trying to say. Okay, U.S. soldiers abroad have better rules of engagement. For the number of guns in a combat zone, the number of people that are killed by U.S. soldier firearms is extremely low. Okay? We don't shoot people because we're scared, not in country. Afghanistan, everybody was carrying a gun. You walk down the street, you see the guy on the bike with an Uzi strapped to his back. You see guns everywhere. It's more prominent in Afghanistan, even more so than it is here in Idaho, which is ironic considering just how often you see guns here in Idaho. Concealed carry, issues with that. But yeah, our U.S. cops, our U.S. police force, our U.S. law enforcement organizations with regards to shoot first, ask questions of the corpse is a little too problematic all across the United States right now, especially in over-policed communities. And we all know which communities those are in the United States. And the militarization, we've seen that on a regular basis. Right now out here in Caldwell, which is a relatively small community with relatively low incidence of violence, we actually have 2 Army or Marine Corps MRAPs, mine resistance armored platforms, I believe is what they're called. Okay, mine resistant armored platforms. Now, why you need a huge mine resistant armored platform infantry carrier in order to move troops here in the United States, we actually had that discussion on another one, right? Not that long ago. The idea that right now that police enforcement has so much combat capable equipment that they can donate. They can donate their up armored systems to Ukraine to fight Russians. Okay. U.S. law enforcement has combat capable equipment they are donating to Ukraine for combat operations against the Russians. That's what they got in the garages in every cop shop all across the United States. Yeah, James, some of the things you bring up, yeah, it's a big thing. And this is it here, Mike. Something happened to our culture around the 90s. Okay, it drastically damaged that generation. Now, I was born in 68. Yeah, so I came of age mid 1980s. Yeah, 1994 was when I actually joined the Army. The thing is that 90s, the generation that grew up 90s, 2000s, and we started seeing that shift in not the first generation of latchkey kids. Yeah, because that's what I was. I was a latchkey kid, get home, nobody's home, go out and play until dark, be in by sundown. And depending on what shift mom and dad worked, that wasn't even a hard and fast rule. Just be home before they got home. Late 70s, 80s, you had that latchkey generation, first latchkey generation. Then 90s was the latchkey generation of a latchkey generation. And I think that's when the development of that cultural trauma finally started settling in. The idea of loneliness, the idea of suicidal ideations. Because that's one of the things we have here in the state of Idaho. We have gun violence here. Don't get me wrong. It's just that in general, the gun violence that occurs here in the state of Idaho isn't outwardly directed like you see any other place. Yes, mac and cheese pizzas. God, God, why does that sound good right now, Mike? Damn, that actually sounds really. Talk about 80s, 90s comfort food, man. You throw some mac and cheese on, the Red Baron frozen pizza, toss it in, bake it up. Baked mac and cheese pizza. Oh, dude, I'm hungry now. Why'd you do that, man? Yeah, we were just talking about that, Steve. The rule is, Steve, 5 days. I got to wait 5 days before I can talk any more about that, even though I've made the announcement that it did happen. So we'll cycle back around to that. Unsupervised kids. But what we're talking about, state of Idaho. Okay, the suicidal ideations here in the state of Idaho are almost always inwardly turned. We have one of the highest rates of suicide among 15 to 21-year-olds in the United States. And we have one of the lowest incidence rates of outwardly expressed gun violence. Some domestic violence, 2 school shootings since 1970, and none of those school shootings actually involved an injury to another party. 2 other gun-related incidences. We don't have gun violence in schools here. The gun violence in the state of Idaho is almost universally inwardly turned. Now, thing is, while firearm-assisted suicides, are relatively high as a ratio, we all know that if somebody wants to kill themselves, it doesn't matter whether they have access to a gun or not. They will find some way to do it. My aunt killed herself no less than 3 different times with alcohol poisoning when she was a kid. You want to die, you're going to find a way. Alcohol poisoning, drugs. It's one of the things that's real interesting right now with the fentanyl epidemic. Right now, access to fentanyl and the fact that you can OD on it without paying attention to what's going on. There's an awful lot of people right now that are being classified as fentanyl ODs. Okay, during the 2 years of the pandemic, mind you, the ages 18 to 44, the number one killer of that particular age group, 18 to 44, exceeding the deaths caused by COVID and several others, was fentanyl ODs. 18 to 44. Fentanyl ODs. Primary killer of Americans. They know the fentanyl's in the drug supply. They know the fentanyl's in the street supply. It's one of those things we've talked about, suicide by mass shooting, when the suicide ideation involves going out in a blaze of glory and taking as many people with you as you can. That's a cultural thing. That's something that you see expressed through outward cultural violence. James, okay, for those of you who are paying, fentanyl is not in the marijuana supply anywhere in the United States. That is a wives' tale. We've had this discussion. Fentanyl by its very nature is, we've legalized marijuana in enough places that you don't need to go to shady street dealers who are likely to lace their marijuana with a little something extra to give you that extra kick to keep you coming back. This is in 1980s and 1990s Mexican dirt weed. Some of the stuff they got now, man, it's pretty. It is really pretty. And even dried, it's pretty. This is one of those things. Legalized drugs. Nonviolent competition enters the market. Okay, quality and purity improves. No more, fewer accidental ODs. And you bring it up. Legal in New Jersey. We got some 30 different states right now where it's legalized in, some form or another. I think it's 30 for recreational. We got another 10 or so. We are literally down to 6 states where it is still completely illegal. Um, that being said, there's not a state in the union right now where it has been decriminalized. Okay. There's no state in the union where you can grow your own without a license. Yeah, it's one of the things that's interesting about drug enforcement here in the United States. There are several states where drugs have been legalized, where marijuana has been legalized. The number of marijuana arrests for violating marijuana tax stamps and various other regulations have continued to maintain the prison population. It's not like they actually made it legal for you. They didn't make it legal for me. They made it legal for big business. And you can't go into competition with big business without paying for the license. Okay, so when you guys take a look at your legalization efforts in your states, is that legalization effort actually for the people, or is it for the corporations? And is the prison industrial complex still getting their fair share of prisoners related to drug-related arrests? Pay attention to that when you talk about legalization, folks. Okay, you may be able to walk into a dispensary and smoke it. Chances are your grower is still violating a law somewhere that's going to get him arrested. And this was one of these things. Okay, adulterating or stepping on drugs becomes a felony. This one's particularly interesting. Reason why is because during Prohibition, okay, they like to talk about the fact that if they legalize it or decriminalize it, if they deregulate it, and let's go with that word, if they deregulate it, private industries are going to be careless about how they produce it. That was one of those things about, let's talk baby formula again. One of the things with the Abbott mill in, I think it was Michigan, was it was in violation of regulation. That's why they closed it down, right? Okay, it was in violation of regulation, so they shut it down. Okay, now those regulations prevent competition, which means there's only 3 or 4 factories in the United States that actually meet the regulation. So we've created 1, manufactured scarcity, 2, a monopoly on baby formula. So those 4 companies can now pretty much charge anything they want because they're able to limit the supply. Okay, if you deregulate baby formula, now anybody can go into business doing it. And you will see several of those businesses, in order to improve their market share, will improve their quality, improve their performance. Okay. And back during Prohibition, when alcohol was illegal, New York City actually went and poisoned the black market supply of alcohol. I mean, this killed thousands of people drinking tainted alcohol that the police poisoned. That's one of those things that we're looking at right now. Several of these markets that we're looking at with black market drugs, we continue to see the problem because there's no competition. They can be sloppy. They don't care. If you die, there's always somebody else. And half of them are snitches for the cops anyway. Steve, one of the things you talk about, the Portugal model. It's generally pretty good. There's a lot of talk about that as far as it goes. This one's actually interesting because delisting, okay, we call that legalizing, but delisting is part of the delegislation process. And delegislating it effectively decriminalizes it. Okay? Because once you delist it, once you delegislate it, there's no regulations associated with it, which means there's no taxes outside of regular sales tax. There's no licensure fees. There's none of the rest of this stuff that goes into it. So with regards to drugs and delisting, legalizing, decriminalization, delegislation, deregulation. Actually, deregulation, anyway, you get the idea. So there's that process that you can go in. All right. So is the thing. Corporations can kill babies by leaving bacteria in the machines. It's okay till they get caught. Now that's the thing is if you kill a baby with your formula because you weren't paying attention to the machines, right now a number of these producers have some sort of insurance and exemption and lets them get away with killing babies. As long as the number of babies doesn't exceed the profit margin, kill babies. That's what we do here in America. Recalls for dangerous cars. They actually got a department in every car sales arrangement that once they start understanding the dangers inherent in certain of their vehicle failures. Okay, remember the Pinto? They actually went through and figured out whether it was cheaper to let people die or to recall and correct the fault. It's corporations for you. It's not about whether you live or die. It's about whether or not they're making a profit. They got entire departments that go in and work the math. What's the profit margin of death versus recall? Yeah, that was one of the things, Mike, that I was thinking about with regards to the Abbott. Okay. 2 babies died. They believed it was associated with the Abbott milk formula. And when they went in and actually did the inspection of the Abbott milk formula, they could not find the bacteria that was associated with the deaths of the baby. However, they did find bacteria that made continuing operation of the factory out of regulations. So even though the bacteria that they found wasn't what was killing, they still shut it down because it was outside of regs. And once it was outside of regs, then the FDA delayed in reopening it by postponing their inspections for reopening for nearly 2 weeks. Or, 2 months. It was nearly 3 months that the Abbott factory was closed before it was re-inspected. Okay, New Jersey, yes, dude. Taxes. Idaho's got 6.5% sales tax. We've got people who will drive an hour across the border to do their shopping for high-ticket items, just so they can buy it in a sales tax-free state. That's industry that's moving out of the state. Those are purchases made out of the state. Our drug tourism here in the state of Idaho, the number of people who leave every week to buy nearly $3 million in marijuana in out-of-state dispensaries. We got sales, we got marijuana tourism, that leaves the state of Idaho. New regulation as soon as the Alito opinion drops, that will be abortion tourism. Where Idaho residents get in a car, drive across the border, and come back without what they had. Simply because of the way the regulations change. So we continue to deal with an awful lot of that all across the spectrum. Ooh, dude, James. U.S. Constitution and Supreme Court recognize and protect the rights to interstate travel. Travel right entails privacy, free domestic movement without government abridgment. Okay, James, if you say so. We also thought Roe versus Wade was solid too. For that matter, Judge Alito, in defense of DOMA, the Defense Against Marriage Act, that the rest of the court shut down, Judge Alito's minority opinion actually applied more to the miscegenation laws associated with Loving versus Virginia. Okay, with this court, Yeah, I don't trust this court with anything. They've already overturned too many previously case precedents and established law. I didn't trust them with anything. Have you, Mike? No, don't answer that. Don't answer that. Um, and no, it doesn't. Literally, it's a piece of paper. It doesn't mean anything if the people do not hold your elected officials responsible for attending to it. It doesn't. And we haven't, which is why several state and several in our national constitution are effectively null and void under our current government system. Yeah, we enjoy a certain amount of freedom. Well, having 300 million people in the nation who like to talk, like yourself truly, I'm here talking to you. I'm talking freely, complaining about my government, saying, you know what, it's broke. There are things we can do to fix it. There are things we should be doing to fix it. Okay. I don't have people beating down my door. Of course, in the state of Idaho, for them to beat down the door and turn me into a political prisoner, they have to ship me out of state. Right now, that's not likely to happen because of how expensive that process is. It might kill me though. Yeah, maybe. We'll see. I'm not really that big of a pain in their behinds just yet. Um, not to draw the kind of attention to get a no-knock raid that accidentally kills me. Right? Do not rely on a panel of lawyers to protect your rights and liberties. Those lawyers are in it for the money. Your rights and liberties are only as good as your paycheck, as good as their paycheck. Dude, democracy, tyranny of the majority, tyranny of the majority, with an ineffective constitution that fails to protect your rights. Okay. Dominant culture wins out. Anything that is a subculture or a non-dominant culture can quickly become illegalized. Simply by the will of the majority. Welcome to majority rules. There will always be a second-class citizen as long as we continue to govern the way we do here in the state, well, here in the United States. They haven't killed me for complaining, so I guess I must have freedoms, right? Yeah. This is one of the differences between an activist and an actionist. Activists, when you're like me, I got a podcast. I'm talking. Stand up on the Capitol steps and I complain. I shout. Occasionally I'll get out in the street and block traffic as I march around in circles. I don't actually do that too often here in Boise. Shout out to my gal who got arrested about a month ago for blocking traffic with a blowhorn. Good on you. But yeah, as long as we're complaining, we're not taking action. We're not doing things. We're not building community networks. We're not creating those gardens that take us off of the food supply chain that we become dependent on. We're not building that community of mutual aid so that, the government can continue to tell us, now you have to go and work for the man for 40 hours a week. Oh, you got to work for him 60 hours this week. Yeah, we're going to take 40% of that from you after you're done working for him. So that 40 hours a week, 16 of it's already belongs to the U.S. government. Yeah, you go, but my income tax isn't that much. Well, no, your income tax isn't. Between your income tax and your property tax and your sales tax and the way they nickel and dime you with your licensing fees, your car fees, yada, yada, yada. By the time everything's said and done, your tax burden is pretty damn close to 40%. And that's assuming you don't live in a high rent market. LA, San Francisco, New York, Boise, Idaho. Yeah. You think you're at the top of the food supply chain. You know what year this is, James? This is 2022. You know why 2022 is a particular interest? It was a 1970s movie called Soylent Green. Don't worry, the taste varies from person to person. Um, right? Not Korean. It was David Koresh. This was Waco. This was the Waco community that got whacked. This was actually a mutual aid community, a covenant community in Texas. They were doing the homeschool. For the record, Waco, biggest school shooting of all time. Well, maybe second. I think there may have been one other. Okay. Waco, biggest school shooting of all time. Government officials went in and killed children in that compound. Yeah, Koresh. I knew who you were talking about, Mike. Sherry, the government doesn't know how the government works. How do you expect your average outsider to look in and understand how it works? Trying to remember, who was it? A German? It was a German. Okay, you can't fight the Americans because the Americans don't read their own doctrine. Okay, that's what it's like going into a government office. Okay, if you don't understand how it's supposed to work, you might as well not even bother going in because the people inside don't know how it's supposed to work. You got a proximity of what they're supposed to be doing, they will help you help them. As a general rule, not even the government knows how the government works. Oh, God, trickle down economy. Thank you, Ronald Reagan. Ronald Reagan. Yeah. Randy Weaver wasn't necessarily, Randy Weaver was a separatist. Okay. He was an isolationist. He just wanted to go up into the mountain with his family and just do the mountain man thing, do that whole multi-generational family thing, that comes away with some not so good connotations. Now that was what Randy did. Randy just wanted to be left alone. Come into town every so often. He'd occasionally do some handiwork for some people in town in order to pay some of the bills. As a general rule, Ruby Ridge, he was there just minding his own business. Wasn't good enough for the Barr Department of Justice and good old Joe Biden. Joe Biden. Okay, I'm going to take a good moment here to talk about this. Reason why, Mike, long as we're talking Randy Weaver and Waco. Okay, Joe Biden was on the Senate Judiciary Committee. Matter of fact, I believe he was the chair. As the chair of the Senate Judiciary Committee, responsible for the oversight of the ATF, Department of Justice, and both secretaries of the Department of Justice, Barr and Janet Reno. He was the one responsible for giving their operation a clean bill of health. Okay. Senate Judiciary Oversight Committee, chaired by Joe Biden, said the ATF and ATF, FBI, and Department of Justice did nothing wrong. Yeah. Joe Biden let everybody associated with both of those incidences walk and signed off on congressional medals for them. Yeah. And that's one of those things. It's so complex, it's become irreparable. The interdependencies, the counterdependencies, the counterbalances, trying to walk through the process. It's walking through a gauntlet. Okay. Yeah, Rambo just wanted to be alone. More communes. And this one's interesting. More groups stepping out, doing different things, making things happen in different ways. We got several intentional communities all across the United States, some of them based off of older hippie models, some of them based on newer mutual aid based models, people going out and getting involved, supporting these intentional communities, people who wander in and out of them, go in and visit. We got an awful lot of options with those intentional communities. Now, let's go ahead and talk about this one thing. I mentioned that. Yeah, the people who survive are the ones closest to the land. Okay? You know how to work the land, you're going to survive. The land will provide. You don't get dependent on a government band-aid. So one of the things I did bring up, we've talked about Uvalde Strong. We've talked about peace movements in the United States. The idea of peace across, communes, Dunbar groups, Dunbar numbers. How do you organize your people? What size groups do you organize them into, in your commune so that they become interrelational and you start building a distributed supply chain architecture rather than the centralized or even a decentralized? How do you start organizing to be disorganized? Right? And that's what distributed architecture is. It's organizing to be disorganized. You're no longer dependent upon one system. You can always reach out for somebody who's got a little something extra, but you're never dependent upon that one supplier. There's always two or three other people who are supplying the same thing. That way you get value for the labor, for the investment, and you continue to build on that. Uvalde, violence, culture of violence. It's more associated with the suicide because, as we mentioned earlier, suicide by cop is becoming more and more prevalent. Sometimes that involves killing little kids to get the cops to come in and kill you. Sometimes it involves going straight to the cops themselves. Sometimes it's taking on armed targets. Murder suicides across the United States, especially with domestic violence. Yeah, you bring that up. Intent to be decentralized. Dude. I'm waiting to see how many of them turn yellow trying to defend the Uvalde situation. Okay. One of the things I did want to talk about before I wrap this up, and I'm down to about my last 10 minutes here, was Libertarian National Convention did happen this last week. And circle clear back around to the beginning again here, folks. In this particular convention, we actually had a mass injection of new people into the party. We actually saw the party grow significantly in preparation for this particular event. Now, there was some fallout associated with that. Yes, the Libertarian Party grew, but it also took time to redirect some of its priorities. One of the issues was former plank 1.5. Essentially, that was the plank that said, keep the government out of reproductive choices. And a large injection of people that came in to grow the party decided that that was not appropriate. It was perfectly acceptable for the Libertarian Party to have people in it who supported state intervention into reproductive rights. Okay. I know an awful lot of women that left the Libertarian Party this week as a result of that. If the party is not willing to stand up to the face of government against government violations of reproductive rights, they're obviously not standing up for the entirety of their constituency. One of the other things they did, there used to be a line in the Libertarian Party platform. We believe bigotry to be repugnant and incompatible with our values. Hold that line out, folks. Apparently, we uphold everybody's right to life, liberty, and all their other human rights. But you can still be a bigot and tell them to go do it somewhere else. As long as you uphold their rights, just let them go do it somewhere else. It's the quiet part out loud, folks. That was the quiet part out loud. You uphold your rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, as long as you aren't doing it around me and mine. We'll see how that pans out over the next 2 years as things change, as things become evaluated, and we begin to understand what will and will not happen as a result of everything that develops from here on out. Pay attention to what's going on. Get involved in your party. Get involved in politics. Get involved in your causes. Yeah. Investigate themselves, no wrongdoing. Luckily, no cops were harmed in this shooting. Guy ran out of bullets shooting kids. Yeah, dude. I know. Disenfranchisement with law enforcement across the United States is at an all-time high right now. We can argue not all cops are bad. I was a soldier. I went to Afghanistan. I went to Iraq. I was involved in a decision-making process and a supply chain that resulted in the deaths of Afghanis and Iraq civilians all across, the Middle East. Yeah, I got a guilty conscience. I'm dealing with it. What is it we call that? Emotional harm? Anyway, whatever it is. It's not quite post-traumatic stress injury. They got another term for it. Emotional damage. Yeah, they got damage. Yes. It's safe to move back to the USA. It's actually bad when you realize you're probably safer in Afghanistan than you are walking the streets in the United States. Honestly, that's not true. Simply because it is dangerous. Anywhere else in the world other than the United States right now is still relatively monoculture. Smaller communities. You know when you're a stranger. Stranger danger, still a big thing in an awful lot of communities around the world. United States is nice. Reason why is because we are multicultural. We are multi-ethnic. We are multi-heritage. People all across the United States were involved in a number of different things. A number of different communities. The United States has been a receiving point for every major diaspora over the last 200 years. Jewish, Chinese, Japanese, Middle East, Basque, Sweden, Irish. Now the United States takes in refugees from every major conflict we've sponsored in the world. We continue to see immigration. This is good. It's fresh blood. This is fresh heritage. This is a fresh injection of people who are looking for a better life, a better way of living, looking for life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness here in the United States of America. Even as we continue to do our best to make it harder and harder to achieve class mobility in the United States. Anyway, I need to get off my soapbox here, folks. Thank you for joining me tonight. Remember, Mike talked about it, Dunbar communities, intentional communities, communes. Support your local hippie. Get out. There are ways to detach from the dominant culture in ways that are safe and effective and allow you to become the best person you can be. It's about finding that community that can help you be your best. First nirvana, second nirvana, third nirvana. You can keep working it up. It's about community, folks. And with that, I'm going to remind you, family, friends, community. As long as you got those three, you can make anything happen. Peace, friends.